And at this time, I'm going to introduce our panel moderators and turn the show over to them. And it's my pleasure at this time to introduce Attorney Archie Jennings, who's the managing attorney with the VI Disability Rights Center, and Attorney Clyde Rivers, Esquire, attorney at law, and they will take it from here.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Clive Rivers, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing to you the panelists for this morning's panel discussion. From the Office of the Governor, Territorial Coordinator for the American with Disabilities Act, Coordinator Stephanie Barnes. From the Legislature of the Virgin Islands, the Honorable President Sean Michael Malone. And from the Office of the United States Attorney, the Chief of the Civil Division representing from the U.S. Attorney's Office, representing the U.S. Attorney for the District of the Virgin Islands, Ronald W. Sharp, Ms. Joycelyn Hewlett. Again, good morning. I would turn it immediately over to the panel, who will have a little discussion with you, and then at the end of the discussion, we'll be entertaining questions. I also have the distinct pleasure of taking the questions from the audience and also to managing the time for responses. Again, let's get started. You could sit. You could make your presentation from your seat. We'll start first with Ms. Okay. All right. Your preference. We'll start first with Ms. Stephanie Barnes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Amelia Barnes. I am the Virgin Islands Territorial ADA Coordinator for the Territory. And today I want to give a warm welcome to our self-advocates in the audience. It is so important. You could clap for yourself, Ms. Cardi. It is so important for me, after 7 years, this is my 7th year of attending the Voices That Count conference. I attended for 4 years as a volunteer with Dr. Haptis and 3 years as the ADA Territorial Coordinator. It is a great pleasure to see a full audience here today in St. Thomas. It is also great pleasure that as we strive for systemic change, to look at this audience and see school students in the audience. That's how it is supposed to be. Welcome, students. I want to bring a warm welcome from the Governor of the Virgin Islands and his wife, who is traveling currently, and send their regards. And if everyone in here knows our governor, they know one thing. There's a saying, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. And if the governor was here today, he would be celebrated. And when I'm finished, you will know why. Because a mountain here today, he has so many friends. In here today, just this morning at 4 o'clock, I wake up very early because I always know that the governor will send out emails and I want to be the first to answer. And I told him, I said these words to him. Yesterday, in training at the Department of Justice, Edita Kati, talked about her journey here on St. Thomas. And I told him, I said, there is a resounding comment every time I train. And the comment is, we love our governor. We love what he has done. We love the fact that he put an ADA coordinator in place. And it could have been anyone. I said yes to Dr. Haptis after saying no many times, and if you know Dr. Haptis, eventually you say yes. But I'm going to tell you things that he has done, because Dr. Haptis asked us to tell you what we have done, what we're going to do, and I'm going to tell you collectively what this government has done for you. Not only did the governor appointed the first territorial ADA coordinator, keeping a promise made at his very first Voices That Count. The governor shortly thereafter gave me a very powerful mandate. He asked me, how are we going to have liaisons in each department if you're the only coordinator? And I thought for just a quick second, because if you know the governor, you better have an answer very quickly. And I told him, I said, the only way we could do this, if we appoint ADA coordinators in every department in the territory. I am pleased to tell you, today, the Virgin Islands government has 107 ADA coordinators in the territory. All our coordinators are trained, not only in the law that governs what I do, the Americans with Disabilities Act, but they're also trained in disability sensitivity training. I ask you today, those of you who experience challenges in your life, please do not, and I beg you, please do not be offended by the word disability. Please don't. Because it is the act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, that affords you some of the opportunities that are forthcoming in this government. When we conduct our self-evaluations and our transition plan, making our programs, our services, communication for you, and access into the buildings, you will see that it is this act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, that affords this opportunity for us to do the right thing. It is not only the right thing, and it's not only the law, but it is critical. It is very critical for us to understand that you, my friends, are unique and innovative and contribute a very creative perspective to the way we live as a community. I live the journey. My son, as everybody knows, I love to talk about Harry. My journey was not to be an ADA coordinator. I will tell you, my journey started way back when my brother and I were going to school, and I was wheeling him to school in a tricycle. If we listen to what and how the way a child is supposed to be educated, we listen to our keynote speaker today. And my friends, the Department of Education should have been here in full force to hear what she had to say. Because that is the way we educate children. We are mandated by law to provide auxiliary aids and services. We are mandated by law to make certain that we do not isolate our children with disabilities. We do not put them in Balski Elementary School by themselves. We mainstream them. That is what we are doing when we talk about accessibility and services for people with disabilities in our community. If we look at the word community, a community is no community if we exclude even one member of that community. And my friends, I stand here on behalf of the governor to let you know you are included in this administration's community. We will, and we will continue to fight the good fight with you. Ms. Carty has said it in very few words. 20 years. For 20 years, I struggled. And I thank you. I thank you, Governor, for putting in place. The road ahead is not going to be easy, I tell you. As we conduct these self-evaluations, or very first in the territory, Ms. Carty is right. Change does not happen overnight. It took 20 years for us to be here today. But I promise you, Ms. Carty, that change will come.
Thank you.
And Dr. Haptis, I still have 3 minutes. Gone are the days, my friends, when people with intellectual disabilities, mobility disabilities, learning disabilities, seeing disabilities, hearing disabilities, that didn't have a voice. Gone are those days. Today, we stand here 10 years, and Dr. Haptis said we've been doing this for 19 years. But 10 years ago, Dr. Haptis gave a voice to people in our community with disabilities. Reflecting on the work we are doing, we can leverage and strengthen the advantages of a diverse community. People with disabilities bring a fresh and innovative perspective on understanding the need for integration, not just for one person, but for all of us. We benefit as a community when we are an inclusive community. Promoting inclusion, dignity, and equality requires us all to conduct our own self-evaluations of our own attitudinal barriers. And I always stumble on that because as a parent of a child with a disability, I am going to tell you, I have had to ask people to please check yourself when you're speaking to my son. Put yourself in check. I'll tell you what Harry just recently said on the subway in New York. Almost his father was so scared. I taught my son to advocate for himself, and in doing so, change the way people treat him and act towards him. And recently on the subway system, my son encountered a police officer who could not understand his little obsessive behaviors. As soon as he got off the train in New York, he stepped backwards to step forward, and he said, "Mom, it just calms me down because there's so many people talking around me." I understand that. A police officer came up to him yelling, and he's yelling, and my son put his earphones in, oblivious to the fact that the police officer is yelling at him, and his dad, who is his service provider, is with him and realized that the police officer is actually talking to Harry. So his dad went and spoke to the police officer, and the police officer said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was autistic." And my son turned around and said, "I have autism. What do you have?" And my friend, that's what we do in our community. We're building foundation. We're building foundation for advocates. The governor put back together, reinstated the Developmental Disabilities Council. Do you know how important that is? This affords the opportunity for people with developmental disabilities to have a voice. It affords them to promote their own programs. It affords them to have conferences like these. It affords them the opportunity to meet and decide what is best for their community. My friends, these are the things that matters in our community. When I sat back earlier and I look at the various disabilities, the one thing that I immediately asked the governor to make certain that every website in our government agencies, instrumentalities, and department are accessible to every one of you, including me. Because I'm going to tell you, my friends always laugh. When they pick up my iPhone, I have the largest fonts. And I know why I have the largest fonts. As I grow older, I too am having problems with my sight. And if I look for everybody out here over 50, aren't we a part of that community? It is true what I say. I'm over 50. All of us, my friends, all of us, we're a community. We have the right to be a part of the decisions that affect our lives. We have the right to be a part of a group. I speak as such because, in closing, I do not separate you. I include me in the you. Diversity enriches our lives. So it is worth the effort to work together to ensure that every member of our community has a voice. Equity means that everyone has equal access to economic, social, and educational opportunity. You have the governor's commitment that we will continue to work to build an inclusive community. The result will not happen overnight. It will take a lot of patience, perseverance, and courage. These are trying times for all of us, but it does not excuse not having access and reasonable accommodations for you. Because when you have access for you, you have access for me. Thank you for being here, and later on you will hear some more of the wonderful work we're doing in the government. Thank you.
Stephanie Barnes. I'd like to call up here now the Honorable President of the Legislature, Sean Michael Hall.
Thank you. Okay, good. Better? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies, Moderator, Attorney Rivers. Pleasant good morning to the panel who's here, and our guest speaker who came all the way from California to join us, Attorney German, right? I think you got it right. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here to be a part of this conference. And before I really get into my remarks, let me just commend Dr. Haptes for what Stephanie Barnes so aptly said, that he has given a voice to a community of persons that needs constant support and advocacy. Because of Dr. Haptes, and I told him, I remember at many forums before, that usually every election year you would have a forum, and that's the only time you would see the elected officials. And I said to him, let's do this every year, even when it's not an election. He probably did that, but you only time you see the senators when there is, or politicians when there is an election. And I said, what we have to do with any group that needs support and advocacy, that we have to be consistent in your advocacy, even when it is not election year. Because some people had this impression, well, if it's not election year, I'm not going to pay attention. But not really. When you stay with the issue all throughout the term or terms of any elected official that is in a position to make the changes, then you become a very much a part of that person's priorities in their agenda. As you're looking at one right here, who, of course, myself is a member of the disabled or physically challenged community. I have family who are blind or deaf or physically disabled for one reason or the other, so I'm very close to the issue. I felt that, well, let's pick up the tent in the legislature and do something about it. Now, I have prepared remarks here, and I'm not going to get into them because I think this is an issue that's so dear to all of our hearts that we don't need prepared remarks to say what we're here to discuss with you. But it's a matter of sharing and interacting with each other and things that we can continue to do to improve the quality of life for persons who are physically challenged in one way or the other. And I'm so happy that Stephanie Barnes spoke first, and I want to personally commend you publicly for your work. The governor is to be commended by selecting Stephanie because it makes a difference who you put into positions. Somebody been in government for quite some time, in the Senate for 9-10 years, you find that you have the funding, you may have the program support, but you don't have the right people who are leaders that can implement. The Senate can mandate, we can pass laws, you must do this and do that. But if the administration does not implement them, they mean nothing. In this case, I have to give credit to the Young Francis administration as relates to policies that we passed recently that will improve the quality of life for the disabled, people who have disabilities in the community. One of the things that we did was Act 7355, which changed, somebody referenced it earlier in the question and answer when the attorney was up there speaking on keynote. But we need to change that name from handicap and all of that. We did it, and it was changed in the 29th legislature. I sponsored the bill, and all of the language in the code has now been updated to meet the federal requirements of the proper term to be used to describe someone who is different or may have a disability. And we also, and that's been implemented. We also have the Disability Act 7320 that just October 1st, a couple of weeks ago, was implemented by the Department of Planning and Natural Resources. What this does in a nutshell, we'll discuss it during the question and answer, I have the note here, provides an incentive for anyone who can adopt their home to accommodate persons with disabilities. You widen your doors, have a ramp at the first floor, etc. And this entitles you, once you've gone through the process at DPNR and are selected, you will then have an opportunity to get a credit on your property tax of 20% for 20 years. So this is a big incentive for everyone because, just like Stephanie said, she's over 50, I'm just under 50, and I have the same issues with my eyes, right? At one point in time, all of us can become physically challenged at some point. So it is incredibly important that policymakers keep this in mind and not to think like, well, you will never have you'll never be in a position like someone who is in a wheelchair or who's blind or deaf. That can happen to anybody eventually, whether you're born with it or not. So I'm very close to that the reality that exists, and this is why I believe we have a lot more support based on a lot of the advocacy led by Dr. Haptes and now with Stephanie Barnes in the government implementing these things. I'm proud to say that the legislature, we are part of the ADA committee. I get the emails and have my executive director engaged, make sure we have our people appointed and trained and we participate so that we are also consistent with our commitment to continuing to provide the education to everyone and to, again, improve the quality of life for all of us who may have some kind of physical disability or the other. One of the things we're working on now in the Senate, which is a little challenge I thought it was going to be as easy as a snap of a finger, was to provide for what's called closed captioning for persons who are watching the hearings, and to have someone who signs at the regular sessions where the laws are being made, so that you may not be able to afford to pay for every committee meeting, or just those that are very important, we'll have someone, but we've budgeted for someone to sign at the regular sessions going forward, so that persons who are watching, and thank you very much, persons who are watching can follow what the Senate is doing that impacts your life. So just looking at the television and wondering what they're saying and what they're doing, You'll have someone signing. We had that for the state of the territory, but we have not been able to make it so that every session that we have someone, and we're working very hard in providing that service for the community. The challenge with that was that we learned that our sonographers, when they type, it automatically can go into the on the screen. However, sometimes it's writing shorthand, and they're concerned about typographical errors. And we're trying to work out that detail where that when they're typed, that it will be automatically corrected like a spell check. And we're researching the program. I'm sure there's something, I think we're close to getting to the solution so that we can have the closed captioning as well. So when we, for those persons who are able to hear, and so we really are very aggressively working to improve this service with Legit TV. We have some representatives here. My director, Bobby Thomas, is here, and he's here, and we've been talking about these things and working how to implement them. So, in a nutshell, that's what in the sentence that we're doing, and you should know that we continue to support this community, and we listen to your concerns. We pass some legislation, they are being implemented, which is wonderful, and we're working on new things, at least from the government side, along with the support and working in conjunction with the executive branch, with Stephanie Barnes' leadership. I really feel comfortable that we're getting there. In fact, let me pop in a little note here regarding Stephanie. She doesn't observe about during the elections. She had the Board of Elections skipping about the polls, the polling places, and making sure that they were compliant. Because remember, I got a call from one of the members saying, we can't open Harris Court because there's something wrong with it. And that shows you that people are doing their jobs and they're really looking out and following through and making sure that we're just not talking about it, but we're actually doing it and making sure that we are applying this benefit and the requirement to make your lives a lot more accessible and easier across the board. So I look forward to the conversation and exchange with you, as I always love to do. And I once again commend Dr. Haptes and all of those who are in the panel here for their work in assisting our community in becoming as integrated, seamlessly as possible, so that your lives are just as comfortable as those who may not have disabilities. And so I'm very much part of that. I'm very proud to be here on behalf of all of the members of the legislature to support this. And trust me, before I came here, I spoke with Senator Payne and Senator Hansen in particular. He's chairing a meeting on health and hospitals right now, and asked me personally to make sure I told you that they said hello, because they're also all the senators are. But they said, where are you going? I said, going on to UVI to the conference Haptes is having, has it every year, the Voices at conference. He said, make sure you tell them that we know we hear when we pop in and we have a break, but we have this hearing. So I just wanted to convey that to you, and I look forward to the exchange with you as we discuss more of the issues that affect the community today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Malone. And to bring the third branch of government in, we're going to hear from Attorney Joycelyn Hewlett from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. First, I would like to thank the university for inviting us to be here today, because it has really provided an opportunity for us to tell you about some of the things that we have been doing in terms of enforcing the ADA. But first, I just wanted to speak a little bit about the presentation by the guest speaker, the keynote speaker. And one of the things that struck me about her presentation was how much we as persons who supposedly don't have disabilities can learn from persons with disabilities and can be inspired. When she spoke about rock climbing and skiing, and I'm thinking, there was no way I'm going skiing. When I was in law school, I was invited to go skiing with my friends many times, and I said, no, I don't want to break my legs, or rock climbing. And here she is, so brave and so courageous. And it was such an inspiration to me just sitting there. And in fact, what it did, it just encouraged me. And we have one of our staff members in the audience, Noah Sachs. Noah, can you please stand? I want everyone to see you. The reason I wanted you to see Noah is because he does most of the work that I'm going to be telling you about that we have been doing. Since 2007, we have been actually putting a substantial amount of our resources into enforcing the ADA. And in fact, I sat next to Stephanie and I said to Stephanie, you are not saying why you are doing all of this stuff, are you? And that's because we are making them do it. We have been enforcing the ADA, and we have numerous cases open in our office against the Virgin Islands government, also against a number of private businesses, including banks, including restaurants, including hotels, because we are very serious. The Department of Justice and the United States Attorney, Ronald Sharp, we are committed to enforcing the ADA. Civil rights enforcement is a top priority of the department. And we see it as not just equal opportunity, but we see it as it's all about human dignity. And the reason why I say that is based on some of the complaints that we have received. One of the complaints that we received was from a businessman, and he owned a lot of businesses in the community, and a very well-known, very powerful person. But then he got sick, and he had to be confined to a wheelchair. And he had to go and vote. Well, he wanted to go and vote. It's all right. And you have a right to vote if you want to vote. And his polling place was at Sibyllis School. And when he got to Sibyllis School, he was able to get a certain distance towards the polling place. But when it came to actually going in where the voting machines were, he was unable to get in there because there was a step up. And so his wheelchair needed to get up on that level. And some of the people who were in line had to get together and volunteer to lift him. And you can imagine that this is a powerful person. He's accustomed to, he owns a lot of businesses, and to just be subjected to being lifted up and put up on that level. And then, of course, the way that the polling place was set up to, all of the chairs and stuff were blocking his wheelchair. So then pretty much everybody had to stop what they were doing, remove all of the chairs and the tables, just so that he can be wheeled in and vote. And of course, as soon as he and his wife got back home, they called our office and had to relate this very sad story to us. And so that's why you just heard Stephanie talk about the polling places, and because we initiated a compliance review of all of the polling places. And so we brought in an architect from the Department of Justice, and he was able to go around to all of the polling places, not just on St. Thomas, but we did the entire Virgin Islands. And he went around to all of them and did an investigation. And based on that investigation, we had a number of findings, and we sent a letter to the Virgin Islands government, basically saying, you need to fix all of these things, because everybody who wants to vote should be able to go to vote, and they shouldn't have to be embarrassed like that. And so we're still in the process with that. We had some changes made, and for the last election, we did go around and monitor the elections just to make sure that all of the changes that we had requested had been put in place. There were temporary changes, a number of them, so they were just in effect for that day, the actual day of the election, if anybody wanted to vote on that day. And some were not, and so as I said, that case is still going on. Another one of the cases that we handled involved someone with a service animal who who wanted to go into the Pueblo supermarket to purchase some groceries. And a lot of us here from the Caribbean, and we don't like animals around our food. It's sort of like a cleanliness issue for us. And so this person had his service animal heading into the store and was berated practically. How dare you try to bring a dog in the store with food? You're just nasty. You need to get away from here. And he was turned away with his service animal. And so, and that person called us as well. And so we brought a claim against the Pueblo supermarket, and we were able to get them to agree to put up a sign. And there is a sign, and I don't know if any of you have seen this, and there should be a sign in Pueblo that says that you and your service animal are welcome in the supermarket. And in addition to that, all of the employees have to be trained within 24 hours of being hired, and they have a policy in place, and that policy is distributed to all of the employees. Now, one of the things that we have to understand about the ADA is that, and when I speak of the ADA, I'm speaking primarily of Title II and Title III of the ADA. Title II applies to state and local government entities. And it protects persons with disabilities from discrimination on the basis of disability in services and programs. And this means that local government agencies are required to operate their services and their programs and activities so that they are accessible to everyone, including persons with disabilities. Now, Title III, it prohibits discrimination on the basis of disabilities in the activities of places of public accommodation, including restaurants, movie theaters, medical facilities, shopping centers, recreational areas, businesses, schools, those sorts of things. Now, for example, with respect to movie theaters, we've also had complaints about the movie theater here in St. Thomas. And that is ongoing, it's an ongoing project. But hopefully at the end of, when we resolve that investigation completely, there will be a number of changes that you will actually see. And I think sometimes you see people, you see elevators being installed and you think that people are voluntarily doing this. Not necessarily. We are out there, and one of the things that you won't see is because a lot of these complaints are not filed in court. We hardly ever file anything in court. And that's because it's so obvious. The violations are so obvious. Anyone who's been back to the Emporium building, you went back there before to pay your taxes, and it's a 2-level building, and there was no elevator. If you were in a wheelchair, there was no way for you to get up to that second level. So it was just obvious. So when we said you have to install an elevator, there is an elevator there now. You just see that pop up there. People don't voluntarily, usually in most instances, agree to install an elevator. You see that this because we are behind them, pushing them to do these things. So the elevator was installed in that property. There's also an elevator going in and in Sobeys. In that there are 3 different government offices in that building. I think it's the property and procurement, housing, parks and recreation.
It is there.
Okay, the elevator is already in that building as well. With respect to the movie theater, we are expecting to have not only devices so that closed caption, so that persons who have disability with hearing, they would be able to watch the movies as well, just like any other person. You can sit there and look at it. Even persons with who have problems seeing as well, you will also be able to go to the movie theater. Persons in wheelchairs, you also would have prime access, seats specifically for you. So when you wheel your wheelchair in, an area would be there just for you as well. And not just for you, because just because you have a disability doesn't mean you should have to sit by yourself. So right in that area, there will also be space not just for you, but also for whoever you choose to come to the movie with. Just like if I go to the movie, I will go by myself. So why should you have to have your wheelchair there by yourself? You'll be able to have whoever your friends are sit with you as well. So these are some of the things that we are doing. And sometimes we have to be creative, particularly for older buildings. And one of the things you're going to notice is, well, I mean, there are just some things that we just can't do. Because Charlotte Mali down, for example, even on St. Croix, downtown Christiansted, getting around down there, it's the historic nature of some of these towns prohibit us from doing some things. I just want to give you 2 examples of how we have tried to find alternatives and how we have tried to be creative in finding solutions for persons with disabilities, because as I said, we believe you should have the same access, all of us should have the same access and the equal opportunity to enjoy whatever there is to enjoy. For example, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Frenchtown Deli. We have, and as all of you know, there is no way for someone in a wheelchair to get into that restaurant. But again, how it's located, it's right there by a road. So there is no space. It's just not architecturally feasible for us to say you have to put a ramp, and it's so small, elevators are expensive, or a lift. So what we have come up with is they have a sign now on the door, and it's also in their menus that basically said, if you are in a wheelchair or for whatever other reason you're unable to come inside the restaurant, you can just step from outside, call them, and they would have to come out and serve you, and they will deliver whatever you want for you. That's the best, unfortunately, that we were able to come up with. And again, that's because of the limitations that there are with some places. The same is true for Medical Arts Complex. Medical Arts Complex, there's a ramp in the back that is very difficult to maneuver. And the only options we had would have probably been for them to install an elevator. And again, we're not trying to put people out of business. And that's one of the things we try to be very flexible, particularly with the older buildings that are pre-ADA. So what we worked out with the Medical Arts Complex is that there's going to be a two-way radio in the back, right down at the bottom of that ramp. And you can press that, and they will hear you inside the Medical Arts Complex, and they will be able to communicate with you, and you let them know you need help getting up that ramp, and they would have to come out and help you maneuver and get into that Medical Arts Complex. So there will be a sign, and in addition to the sign, they would also have an intercom that you can press and let them know that you are outside. With respect to Bluebeard's Castle Hotel, everyone knows there are 3 different restaurants there. Room with the View, Cabana Bar, and Banana Tree Grill. And we entered into an agreement with them. And I don't know how many of you have been there and noticed the changes. And you know, sometimes, amazingly, sometimes you won't even pay attention to ramps and elevators until something happens to you. And I know that happened to me. I stepped on some hot coals on the beach, and all of a sudden I only could use 1 foot. And then I started noticing the elevator in the building where I work was broken. And I never noticed that before. And I walked in, I'm like, how am I supposed to get to my office? I'm on the 2nd floor. So I called complaining about the elevator. But sometimes these are things we just take for granted and we don't notice. But I'm sure that the people who are affected will notice. They can know anyone, and anyone now can have access to With a View. Anyone now hopefully will be able to get down. I think Cabana Bar is maybe in the last phase, and Banana Tree Grill. Now, everyone also knows that Bluebeard's Castle Hotel is an old hotel, and it's very difficult to make some of these changes. So what we ended up doing was we agreed that they would do it in phases over a 3-year period of time. So you would eventually bring a lot of these into compliance. And so we're asking all of you, if you have a complaint, we would be happy to hear from you. We want to make sure that, as I said, everyone has equal opportunity to enjoy everything that these islands have to offer. You should be able to eat in any restaurant. All of us should be able to eat in any restaurant we choose. We should be able to go to the beach. We should be able to swim in the pools. We should be able to do anything. Or as I mentioned, pools, the 2010 standards, we have some new 2010 standards which actually allow for that. And so we have an initiative involving the hotels. We are going to be going around to all of the hotels and making sure that they're in compliance. And any pools, swimming pools, they also have to be in compliance, because if there's a pool party and you have a disability, you should be able to get into that pool with your friends and enjoy it. You should be able to take swimming lessons. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to swim, but you have to be able to get down into the pool. And so these are just some of the things that we are doing. And as I said, if you want us to do more, we are happy to do it. Noah, that's primarily his job, and he'll be happy to hear from you. And we would love to help, because we believe that everybody should have an equal opportunity to enjoy everything that there is to offer. Thank you.